Okay, I want to call the meeting to order. This is the Board of Education meeting, Tuesday, May 22nd. We have 6 board members present, 1 absent. The board has been in closed session since 6 o'clock for the purposes of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for 1 or more classes of employees, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. C, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body. D, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. And E, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by Section 2.06. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so tonight we start off with recognitions. And the first one, if Deborah Seagate could come up, and the Code Rush National Finalist from Churchville could come up as well.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Churchville Coders, part of the coding club that we started this year. We have a good mixture of 6th graders, 7th graders, and 3 of our 8th graders that will be leaving us and going to York. They were also part of the winning team last year, my 3 8th graders. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the competition. Code Monkey Code Rush Code Monkey itself is a leading game-based learning platform that teaches students the fundamental principles of computer programming. From February 22nd through March 22nd, thousands of students, hundreds of teams in over 34 states participated in Code Rush, which is Code Monkey's National Coding Championship. This epic event all started with a warm-up that got students excitedly jumping into the jungle of code and working together to solve 140 challenges. Elementary and middle schools competed in their age division for the tight race. The programming language used in Code Monkey is called CoffeeScript, which is similar to JavaScript, and it's a language that the industry uses primarily for web applications. The Churchville Coders 2.0 girls and boys teams completed all challenges ahead of most schools and received all stars for each challenge, rewarding them with 4th and 5th place overall in grades 6 through 8. Congrats to our awesome Churchville Coders.
Congratulations. How fabulous. When you look up here and you look at these students and you're like, this is our future. And the future looks pretty good. Pretty good. So I'm impressed. Thank you so much. Here's the process. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to read a proclamation. I'm going to try really hard to pronounce everyone's name perfectly, but I might mess up. So please forgive me, students and parents. And please correct me as I can.
Okay, perfect.
So then I'll read this proclamation, and then you'll get to go around and shake every adult's hand. And we're all going to be very excited and proud of you while we do this. Okay. Whereas Code Rush is a nationwide competition for teams of students in grades 3 through 8, hosted by Code Monkey and sponsored by DK Books, publisher of highly visual photographic nonfiction books for adults and children. And whereas Code Monkey nurtures problem-solving skills, logic, and creativity in an interactive platform that introduces student teams to coding in real programming language called CoffeeScript, Code Monkey software, and requires team members to play through a total of 141 challenges covering program topics such as objects, functions, simple loops, variable, arrays, and for loops. And whereas, beginning in January of this year, the 17-member Churchville Coder Z team began playing through a series of weekly challenges and ending with the team unlocking the last 40 challenges on March 19th, allowing each team member to earn an automatic score between 1 and 3 for each solution based on the quality of the solution. And whereas the following Churchville Middle School team members competed nationally against other 6th through 8th grade students and were awarded first place by 4th and 5th? Okay. You're first in our hearts.
They were there.
By completing all 141 CoffeeScript challenges without error, the following: Paul Anwar, Jeremiah Bolden, Dimitri Bolsani, Salma Broby, Joseph Byrne, Diego Carrera, Alyssa Caruso, Kalina Siglinski, Sophia Chan, Teresa Sherrill, Ellen Cockman, Nicholas Dabrowski, Matthew Huffman, Benjamin Galarza, sorry, Benjamin, Jeffrey Liu, Mackenzie Peterson, Kayla Tatunji. And whereas, as a reward for their standing, the Churchville Coder team received a Code Monkey official trophy plaque, a yearly classroom subscription, and one set of DK's first set best-selling coding books for children. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to Churchville Middle School, to their students, the families, District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community School District 205 expresses congratulations to these students, their parents, Churchville Principal Gina Pogue Reeder for her support, to their teacher Deborah Segan, who serves as a Churchville computer literacy teacher, for these outstanding achievements. Congratulations, students.
Okay, next recognition is the Illinois Distributive Education Clubs of America. So if the people getting a recognition for that could come up front, please.
All right. All alone. DECA, or Distributive Education Clubs of America, is a co-curricular leadership organization for students involved in our business coursework. It helps them link their business classroom learning to leadership and competitive events at the regional, state, and national level. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Dave Lyons, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the students' competitions.
Hi, thank you. There are 3 competitions that take place with DECA. First, there is a regional event where the Illinois is split into 3 districts. There's North, Central, and South. And so we had the first competitive event where Jason and Matt, who could not be here tonight for family obligations, they competed and they came in 4th place in the first event. That qualified them for state competition. That's every DECA competition team from state. And there were roughly 2,000 students at this competition in a variety of events ranging from financial services, which Jason and Matt competed in, to buying and selling, merchandising, hospitality. There's a wide array of activities and role plays. Each event consists of 2 tests, a cluster, which is specific to their chosen performance, and also they have an economics test, which they both take a test in. And then after that, they do a role play where they're given a set of criteria and given 30 minutes to kind of answer the criteria. And Jason and Matt did excellent at state, coming in 2nd. It's really hard to do. This is the 2nd year in a row that they've made it. 2nd place allows them to advance to the national competition, which took place in Atlanta, Georgia on the 21st of April. This is, to give you the scope, it's 25,000, about 20,000 students being at this event, and to hold this event they had to rent out the Mercedes-Benz Dome, the new football stadium. I mean, it is a massive event, and it's extremely competitive, and it's really, to get there is really truly an accomplishment. Jason and Matt did excellent. Didn't get to the final event, but they placed very highly, and so very proud of their effort. To make it there twice shows just the true character and capacity that these 2 young men have. So I'm very proud of what they did accomplish, and it's been an excellent experience for everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Congrats. One of the best parts of these competitions, and something our community should be extremely proud of at York and at the grade schools, is just what this represents as far as the application of knowledge. It's not just educating, but it's actually how to do it. So like, you can design my retirement portfolio, these other kids can fix my iPad. And like really real world solutions. So congrats and congrats. I'll read the proclamation. So whereas the purpose of the Illinois Distributive Education Clubs of America, DECA, is to enhance the co-curricular education of students with interests in marketing, management, and entrepreneurship, allowing students to develop skills and competence for marketing careers, build self-esteem, experience leadership, and practice community service, and is committed to the defense of marketing education and the growth of business and education partnerships. And whereas at the state DECA conference held in Rosemont this winter, over 900 participating students competed in economics exams, career cluster exams, and role plays, being ranked against all the other competitors in their event, and with the top 10 students advancing to state competition. And whereas with over 1,000 students participating, 2 York Community High School DECA students competed in the state DECA conference at the Hyatt Regency O'Hare in March, qualifying them for the national conference by placing in the top 4 in their event. And whereas Matt Anderson and Jason Kentra competed as a team in the financial team decision-making event, finishing 2nd in the state and advancing to the DECA International Career Development Conference held April 21st through 24th in Atlanta, Georgia. And whereas the DECA program prepares emerging leaders and entrepreneurs for careers in marketing, finance, hospitality, and management in high schools and colleges around the globe, and provides opportunity for high school students to network and market their skills. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community, Now, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to these students, their parents, and their teacher, David Lyons, who served as the DECA advisor this year, and Wendy Albert, York's Division Chair for Career and Technical Education, for these outstanding achievements. Congratulations.
Next, we have the Music Educator Innovator Award winner, Chris Gemko.
I think it's a point of pride that everybody shares in this community how exceptional York's music program is. And I think Mr. Gemko is an integral and unique member of a very great team. From what I am told, this award is entirely appropriate. Mr. Gemko has helped develop some of our most creative students to grow into true artists. And we see that demonstrated at the highest level every time we graduate a class. But it's seen, I think, more and more in the daily contributions that he makes to our students. It's my understanding you've taken an integral role in the Fine Arts Week and push it along to foster a broad and unified view of what arts should be, actively working to make it the remarkable event that it is. And that I'm told that you've shown the passion and the dedication to our kids that makes this award so fitting. So let me read the proclamation. Whereas the mission of the Give a Note Foundation, which was founded in partnership with the National Association for Music Education, is to strengthen music education opportunities for all students, while being strategically focused on developing partnerships with business leaders and decision makers and providing the resources necessary to nurture new and existing school programs. And with each donation highlighting the importance of music education and providing grants to programs in need. And whereas the Give a Note Foundation, in partnership with Country Music Association, has announced that Chris Gemko, music teacher at York Community High School, has been awarded one of 5 Music Education Innovator Awards nationally, which includes a $4,500 grant to create lasting change in the honoree school district. Whereas this award recognizes school music programs that are led by creative music educators using innovative and sustainable strategies in non-traditional or traditional secondary music courses. And whereas Give a Note President and Board Chair Beth Slusher said, these educators have demonstrated both creative answers to needs in their school communities and a true desire to reach all students with music, developing creative, inclusive programs that also meet the needs of diverse student populations. And whereas this award recognizes music educators across the United States who've demonstrated a positive impact on their students and the community. And Chris Gemko was honored in Nashville, Tennessee at the Country Music Awards Teachers of Excellence event on May 8th, 2018, and will be honored November 2018 at the National Association for Music Educators National Conference, where he will present his program to other music educators. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York High School, District 205, and the community at large, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to Chris Gemko, winner of the Music Education Innovator Award, for this outstanding achievement. Thank you.
So now we move to a bittersweet recognition of Malia Smith, who's retiring at the end of June. And so one of us is going to speak for all of us, but we all have, we're happy for you, but sad to lose you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Malia, if you don't mind, I want to do this from my chair because the font on my iPad isn't big enough for me to do it standing up. I have a few things to say about Malia Smith, our retiring Executive Director of Communications and Public Relations. 4 pages of things, to be exact. Malia has been with us since August 9th, 2010. And in those 8 years, I just have a few bullet points of what Malia's done in communications for our district. First is automated messaging. She expanded our message system called School Messenger to relay critical information sent to parents and staff via email, phone, and text. She added resources to allow stakeholders to receive timely notices via Facebook, Twitter, and on our website. In community engagement, she coordinated the 6 Focus 205 community meetings beginning in September of 2015 and ending in February of 2017. In addition, she oversaw the online survey through Thought Exchange and developed a special website to focus on community engagement information. Malia has often represented the school district in our community. She is a member of the Youth Commission on the City of Elmhurst. She took a lead role to step up the Youth Commission's purpose by bringing in top-name speakers on important topics such as opioid addiction and bullying. She's a member of the Intergovernmental Communications Roundtable Group, which works cooperatively with the city, the library, the Park District, and Elmhurst College communications representatives to share information. And in the past 8 years, Malia has brought our district's communications into the 21st century by implementing e-newsletters such as Talk 205, a weekly District 205 e-newsletter sent to all parents, staff, and to anyone else who signs up to receive it. She also coordinated the development of branded messaging from school-level e-newsletters. After each board meeting, she creates board highlights, a detailed follow-up of each Board of Education meeting, which is sent to parents, staff, and to anyone who signs up to get it. iNews, she creates a monthly e-newsletter sent to staff, which includes all information pertinent to staff. Previously, that information was emailed separately from each department at no specific time intervals. She's created many other publications. For example, the At a Glance publications, Budget at a Glance, and Facilities at a Glance, which are paper and online booklets which overviews the district's facilities and finances. Malia started the Safety Tip line. Quick Tip 205 is an anonymous reporting system for students in grades 6 through 12. She also brought us onto social media. The district and individual schools now have a social media presence on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. She dramatically improved our website. She made the decision to change the website vendor and improve user experience via a website redesign. And if I remember correctly, our website has won awards for being the most transparent governmental website in DuPage County. And along the way, she's done quite a bit for our York High School alumni. Malia created the York Distinguished Alumni Program. So far, over 30 York alums have returned to be honored at an annual evening ceremony, and they've enriched the educations of our students by spending the following day meeting with York students. She encouraged York alumni to create an alumni association. Currently, the York Community High School Alumni Association is taking a lead role in the York Centennial Celebration, which will be held in September of this year. The Communications Department has been and will continue to provide support for this event. Malia has been responsible for many of the awards our district has won in the past 8 years. For example, the Illinois School Board Association, Those Who Excel. She encourages principal and staff to nominate someone in each of our schools for the award. INSPRA and NESPRA awards. She entered various communications pieces to the Illinois School Public Relations Association, INSPRA, and the National School Public Relations Association, NESPRA, communications contests, and the INSPRA Distinguished Service Awards. You can go to our website to find the extensive list of these awards that we've won through Malia's influence. So, if you've driven by the district office at 7 o'clock at night on a regular basis and wondered whose car that is parked in our parking lot at that hour, it's Malia's. In my opinion, our community owes her a debt of gratitude. Before Malia started to work here, many in our community wondered what was going on at the school district. Today, if you don't know what's going on here, you have only yourself to blame. I also know that Malia will want me to point out that she didn't do all of this on her own. She has a great team, and I personally think she's been a great leader of her team. And I want to thank Debbie Holstein and Kathy Schrader for their help in compiling this list of accomplishments. And I think Debbie and Kathy summed up not only their feelings, but the feelings of our school board, our district, and our community when they said to me, "Malia was a pleasure to work for and with. We'll miss her terribly." Thank you, Malia. Seems hardly fitting. Put a plaque for you to hang in your library at home. Thank you for all you've done.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and I've made many wonderful friends here that will be in my heart forever. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay. Deep breath. Before we move to public comments, I would like to read a statement. As part of the Master Facilities Plan, the Board of Education is considering potential boundary adjustments. We understand this is a very sensitive topic for our community. On April 10th, the board was shown potential options for balancing enrollment. On May 8th, the board was shown additional options to consider. We understand, as fellow members of the community, that some of these options feel less than ideal. This school board is committed to a decision-making process that is transparent and offers opportunities for community input and feedback. Balancing enrollment in our 8 elementary schools is a key factor in our ability to decrease the dispersions in class size across the district. In our quest and commitment for transparency, the community has been shown the options being considered at the same time as the board. Additional options were added for consideration, understanding that multiple options should be discussed as the conversation takes place at the board table and throughout the community. The board is considering all feedback carefully and will particularly consider the thorough feedback that is shared with us from the exit surveys after the community-wide forums. Board discussion on this topic as part of the Master Facility Plan will take place in upcoming meetings. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to public comments. As a reminder, The board will receive public comments for up to 3 minutes concerning items on this agenda, as well as communication, petitions, reports from citizens, or representatives of other public agencies. And as a reminder, we do not respond to public comments at this time. There's a timer that will beep at 3 minutes, and we ask that you complete your thought at that time. So first on the list, and I'm sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly, is Predrag? All right.
Well, actually, thank you for opening with that statement, because I was feeling really bad about potentially, talking angry about border adjustment after all these great recognitions. For me, and I believe for the rest of the parents in Elmhurst, I think what is really important is to hear, feedback from us, especially in situations such as mine, because I tell you, if anybody needs a good laugh, please just join me after the meeting. I can show you my situation. I live literally across the street from Hawthorne, and this new border adjustment is putting my kid 1.1 mile to Edison. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And I do thank you for the communication that you're providing over email. Thank you, Superintendent. And that's basically all I wanted to say at this point. Thanks.
Okay, next is Tanya Cummins.
Hello. I've attended many meetings regarding the Master Facilities Plan or referendum, including 2 building-specific and 1 community-wide meeting, and I'm also on the CAT team. So I'd say I'm as familiar with the plan as anyone. And at each I've heard for the desire for parity, which is the new equity, amongst the buildings as a driving force, and I commend that goal since we're a community unit school district. But with parity put out there as a goal, I hope you can understand why I wrote angered, but I would say more disappointed, to once again see huge donations to the tune of $35,000 plus on the agenda to be accepted tonight. I've had the opportunity to meet with many of you and speak with you over the last year, and that has been a wonderful experience. But having done so, it boggles my mind that continuing to accept these uncapped donations for items like classroom books, STEM materials, and library makerspace items does not scream to you as contributing to inequity or lack of parity in educational opportunities for the schools that cannot raise anywhere near those numbers. Per every measure used by the district, there are buildings that are chronically underperforming when measured against other 205 schools. And doesn't it make common sense that those would be the buildings that most need the supplemental materials, but those schools are least able to raise anywhere near this amount of money? And I understand that you don't dictate where the raised funds go, and I would never ask you to. But if parity is a district goal, I'm here, 9 months after I first stood before you, asking once again for you to reconsider your donation policy and reflect on how it's creating and sanctioning building-to-building inequity. I think physical parity of buildings is a very honorable goal, but it should be secondary to the educational parity. And I have to say, on a personal note, until I'm assured that the equity and access to materials and educational experiences is across the board, I'm not prepared to support any other of the district's plans at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Dana Kanakis.
And then it stays on? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Kanalakis. I'm also here to voice some opposition on the boundary issues. I live in the Jefferson School District, and I'm literally 1 block away from the school. And under option C, my children, who will be attending kindergarten 2019, would be sent to Edison. And I just wanted to advise everyone that we have started a petition, which will be provided to the board shortly, which will raise the concerns of the whole Jefferson community, including Jefferson parents and families that are actually not impacted by this, in that their children wouldn't be moved to Edison, but their children's friends would be moved to Edison. Some of our concerns are proximity. Like I was saying, I'm 1 block away from the school, and I'd be required to walk my children or drive my children, I believe, roughly 1.2 miles to Edison. Distance and the safety. How do we get our children there safely? That's another question, because we have a main thoroughfare of St. Charles and a pretty busy street of Poplar to navigate. Our contiguous boundaries are not preserved. So we would literally be driving or walking our children through the Jefferson area to get to Edison. Natural boundaries are also not preserved, meaning the prairie path. We were also concerned about the timing of the concept, which I know was addressed before this public comment, and that you were provided with that information on May 8th. But I was told by some Jefferson parents that they were concerned because there was a Jefferson-specific meeting held on the 7th, and this was not mentioned. It sounds like that's probably the reason, but that was a concern that we had. This would impact a large amount of students compared to some of the other options, and there's also some concern about the impact to property values. So that is just what I wanted to say at this moment, and I'm sure we will be back to talk more. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports and presentations, Dr. Henderson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about one of my favorite topics, instructional coaches. I think by now everyone on the board knows of my passion for our instructional coaching program. Lucky for you, I've taken my 500-slide PowerPoint presentation and cut it down to a manageable amount for tonight. So tonight I'm here to provide an update on our instructional coaching program. I want to review with you the outcomes that we set for this year and our results to date, celebrate some of our successes, and identify our next steps for growth and where we are heading. So sometimes to the audience, instructional coaches are behind the scenes, and they really don't see them or know who they are in their schools because their work is primarily with the adults in the building. So to go back to why do we have instructional coaches? The purpose of coaching is to improve student learning, and sometimes that gets lost in the fact that, again, our emphasis is on working with the adults, but if we are doing all of this work with the adults and don't improve student learning, then we've really lost sight of what the purpose is. So the goal is to improve student learning through the support of teachers working to improve their instructional expertise. When we launched the coaching program in the fall of 2016, we set outcomes for the first 3 years. And our outcomes for year 2 are on this slide. You can see that in year 2, which was different than year 1, the first one is increased student performance. Again, that is the ultimate goal of coaching. We have an outcome around specific to the math curriculum, because we knew that launching Eureka Math in grades K through 8 was going to be a big endeavor. We have increasing the instructional capacity of teachers in meeting the needs of all students in Tier 1 instruction, and then increasing the use of purposeful collaborative plan time. So we're going to go through each of the outcomes and talk about the results that we have so far. So the first of those is increased student performance. Our end of the year data is just being finalized. I think yesterday was actually the due date for teachers to have their spring Fontes and Pinnell in our Mastery Manager data system. So when we have our student achievement update, we'll be able to give you a lot more detailed information. However, earlier this spring, you saw a presentation on the improvement of reading instruction at the elementary level. And at that time, you saw teachers talking about their Fontes and Pinnell data and the growth that they had seen just from fall to winter at Hawthorne School, which was representative of all of our schools. That is a direct result of work with our instructional coaches. Our instructional coaches, along with the reading specialists, trained our teachers in using the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark system. They have worked with teachers throughout the year on how to take that data and apply that to their instruction so that they are meeting each child where they need to be. We're also using that same process in grades 6 through 8 with students who are in our Tier 2 or Tier 3 interventions. So we're really looking forward to being able to report on that growth, because that is a tool that they've not had available to them in the past. Similar to the situation our elementary teachers were in, where they had a difficult time really pinpointing the levels their students were reading at. Our middle school teachers have had that too. So taking Fontes and Pinnell to our students who are in reading interventions is going to be powerful in helping us move them. Our coaches have also supported with the implementation of Eureka Math. You've heard us talk about many times the workshop model of instruction. A workshop model means that very little time is spent with the teacher in front of the whole class teaching one whole lesson. There may be a short mini lesson, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, but then the students are working in groups based on their need for that learning target. So the instruction is quite differentiated. The teacher moves between working with small groups. Students are working on tasks in math. For example, they might be working on some problem-solving activities with other students in a group, while the teacher is working with a small group of students who might need some extra reinforcement and practice, or who are ready for a challenge to move beyond the standard. And then other district assessments we'll be looking at. One in particular will be algebra. If you'll recall from last spring, algebra was really revitalized and restructured so that no matter when you take algebra, whether you are in 7th grade, 8th grade, freshman, or beyond, it is the same course across the district, the same assessments across the district. So I talked a little bit about the workshop model for Eureka Math. Other ways our coaches have supported the Eureka Math implementation is how to effectively integrate technology into this instruction. There is a computer program called Zern, which is completely aligned and mirrors Eureka Math. And so our coaches have helped teachers really integrate how to use that effectively, again, for students to have some self-directed learning. The other piece where our coaches have really supported Eureka Math implementation is with leading our teachers in the analysis of data and student work. So when teachers are working in PLCs, they're bringing exit slips from the math lessons, looking at where students are making errors and where they might have some conceptual misunderstandings, and then making a plan to go back and tackle that again with the students, perhaps within a different instructional strategy, different wording. That's where they collaborate among each other and check in to see how teachers addressed it in other classrooms so that they might be more effective. We have another outcome on meeting the needs of all students through quality Tier 1 instruction. Tier 1 is what we consider grade level instruction. It's what all students are receiving. It's the general education core grade level content. So we've worked really hard in grades 6 through 12 on refining our professional learning communities, and our instructional coaches have played a vital role in that. Each of our middle schools and the high school have brought leadership teams that include our instructional coaches to work with Cindy Harrison, who is a consultant that works with our coaches and also works with our leadership teams on PLCs. So they've received intensive training from Cindy as building leaders. Then they go back and the coaches facilitate that continued learning with all of the teachers in the building. So they really work with a gradual release of responsibility model where the coach may take a very active role in leading the PLC and then gradually pulls back that support, because the ultimate goal is to have teachers running PLCs on their own. That's how you get the ownership of the work of the PLC and how you get the best results. And then our elementary schools will be starting that process next week. Instructional models in grades K through 5, that's where we see that our coaches have really guided teachers to move into the workshop model. It was common in reading and writing, and now we're seeing it shift to math. And if you think about the math classes that you sat in, not only in high school and middle school, but even in elementary school, it was primarily a stand and deliver type of model of instruction, and now we've moved completely away from that. And we're starting to see that even creep into middle school, where they are shifting to the workshop model. Another place where we see our coaches providing support is with the rigor and relevance framework. When I was up here, maybe March, it was sometime late winter, early spring, or no, I think it was maybe last month, talking about instructional rounds. And we shared a video of one of our instructional coaches leading professional learning at the building during a late arrival. And it was about how to increase rigor in academic discussions. That's a very great example of the work you'll see our coaches doing in all of our schools, where they are honing in on that rigor relevance framework and how that can be applied to teachers' daily instruction. One of our final outcomes was on increasing the use of purposeful collaborative planning time. One of the primary ways we have leveraged this collaborative planning time this year in grades K through 8 is for the use of acceleration. In the elementary schools, so in K-5, that has had a literacy focus where teachers are looking at literacy data across their grade level and then regrouping their students for 30 minutes each day for some more targeted reading support. Our coaches support that process by really having led teachers through the data analysis portion, coaching them in how to look at that data, group students, how to target specific learning objectives for the different levels of readers at the grades. Again, the refinement of professional learning communities at grades 6 through 12, I mentioned that. And then moving from what to how. So a lot of times when you hear about planning time, whether it's collaborative or individual, you think about teachers talking about what I'm going to teach. I am in Unit 4 and we are in Lesson 3. That's the what. And that's fine, but what really improves instruction and student learning is shifting from what I'm teaching to how I'm teaching it. So rather than focusing on what, teachers come knowing what they're teaching. They come to the planning time ready to talk about how. What are the best approaches and strategies we can use to get the results we need in student learning? And so our coaches, again, have facilitated that conversation. They use structured protocols with the teams so that they can move them into talking about how. How are we going to teach this content? And that really shifts the focus. When you're talking about what, you're talking about a teacher action. When you're talking about how, you're really focused on the learner. And that's where we want our teachers to be working. So those are just some results. Again, as we start to get our end of the year data, we'll have more information on our student learning outcomes. But I'd like to share some of the successes with you. And this is a graph you're going to see twice. So if you look at the blue section, and that's about 32%, that represents the number of teachers who took our coaching survey, who worked with a coach 5 or more times this year. So let me just take a step back. All of our teachers were given a survey on coaching across the district. We had 71% participation, which is really incredible to have that high of a number of participants. So we put a lot of stock in this data and have used it to drive action plans moving forward. So almost a third of our teachers have worked with a coach 5 or more times. There's also opportunities for growth, but I'm going to come back to this graph in that section. So another area of success is related to our special education coaches, which was something we added this year. So one of the questions or statements that the teachers were asked to respond to was, I know what kind of supports my school's special education instructional coach can provide. 60% of our teachers agree or strongly agree that they know the type of support that they can receive from a special ed instructional coach. And for a first-time program, that is definitely a success, particularly in our middle schools and our elementary schools where they are not in a building full-time. We have one middle school special ed instructional coach who works with all 3 schools. Our elementary special education coaches each work with 4 buildings. So this graph is a comparison graph that looks at the number of times teachers worked with a coach and how they responded to the statement, instructional coaching has had a positive impact on my teaching practice. Not surprisingly, but it's affirming, the more a teacher worked with a coach, the more likely they were to state that it had a positive impact on their teaching practice. And that percentage is, I believe, just a little over 80% who agree or strongly agree. Another success, again, is a comparison graph with the number of times that a teacher worked with a coach and a response to the statement, instructional coaching has had a positive impact on student learning. What I like about this graph is even teachers who only worked once or twice or only in a group setting still believe that coaching has had a positive impact on student learning. An area of success that really brings me a lot of pride because it really speaks to the quality of our instructional coaches across the district. So between June and December of this year, we will have 12 groups of coaches who are presenting at national and state level conferences. The first will be the International Society for Technology and Education, where we have 1 group presenting in June. The second, in December, we have 3 groups who are presenting at Learning Forward. And Learning Forward is the national organization for professional learning. And then finally, in October, we have 8 groups of coaches who are presenting at the Illinois Council of Instructional Coaching. So the high quality of these conferences are an indication of the level of quality in the professional learning that our coaches are designing and delivering to our teachers, because many of them are presenting on topics and with presentations that they have used with the staff in their own buildings. So let's move into some opportunities for growth. This again is that first graph I showed you where almost 1/3 of our teachers have worked with an instructional coach 5 or more times. So I'm really proud of that. However, if you look at the orangey yellow slice of the pie that represents almost 22%, that's where we're really targeting our growth. So those are teachers who've worked with a coach already this year 1 to 2 times. Most of them report that they found that to be helpful. It may have been that they sought out an answer to a specific question or issue, or were looking for a quick fix for something. Those are the teachers that our coaches are going to target as their next group of customers, so to speak. They've had a positive experience with the coach, and they are going to work with them to try and bring them in to working with the coach more frequently. Another opportunity for growth will be with our special education coaches. So when we look at the response to the statement, working with my special education instructional coaches had a positive impact on my instruction. We have a high percent of teachers, almost 54%, who marked that NA, which means they've not sought out the services of a coach. That can be for a lot of reasons. Most specifically, I would hypothesize in the first year, is that many gen ed teachers hear special ed instructional coach and are jumping to the conclusion that it's really targeted for special ed. And to be honest, a lot of our special education teachers sought out the help of the instructional coach. However, most of our students who receive special education services are in a general education classroom. So we really want to see our general education teachers making use of the coaches. So that's an area we'll be targeting and looking for ways to improve. So some of our next steps for growth. So just like when you shift from what you're teaching to how you're teaching, our coaching is going to shift a bit from teacher-centered coaching to student-centered coaching. So primarily when teachers have sought out working with a coach, it's been because they are looking to tweak something about their own practice, work on a specific strategy, something to that effect. Now, as teachers come looking for the help of a coach, the coaches are going to begin with, what aspect of student learning are you seeking to improve? Okay. Is there specific data that you have that you'd like to improve? Is there something you're seeing in student work? But what aspect of student learning? And from there, they can work backwards and see what is the area that we really need to focus on based on what you want to see from student learning. It takes time to get to that level, and now we're here. Our coaches have built great relationships with their teachers. There's trust there. They've built up their credibility as being having an expertise in instruction. So now we're really ready to shift to that next higher level. One of the areas that we're really excited about for a growth area is increasing the coordination of support for teachers between our instructional coaches and our grades 6 through 12 department chairs. So at our middle schools, we have 2 coaches in each building, and York has 4.2 FTE, but that's split among 7 coaches because most of our coaches teach a few classes and then spend a few periods coaching. But sometimes what we see is that when a coach has experience in a specific discipline, a teacher from a different, so if I had experience teaching English and was an instructional coach, a science teacher may not feel that they have something to learn from me. And we disagree with that wholeheartedly, because you can increase questioning and improve upon questioning in every content area, as just one example. So we really want to build that bridge and help our teachers understand that our instructional coaches are the instructional experts, where their department chairs are the content experts. And there's knowledge to be gained from both. So we talked about that with both our coaches and principals when our consultant was here a couple of weeks ago. And then last week, Dr. Cohen and I ran a meeting for the grades 6 through 12 department chairs. We're starting to bring them together now on a regular basis, and we talked to them about it. One of my sneaky ways of working on that is to see if I can strong arm our department chairs into going through a coaching cycle with the instructional coach as a model for their department. There'll be a continued focus on professional learning communities in grades EC through 12 with support from instructional coaches. And then we'll be looking to increase the alignment between our instructional coaches and our special education instructional coaches as we look to build cohesion between those groups and look at how we can ensure that our gen ed teachers are taking full advantage of the special education instructional coaches.
Mary, before you show the video, 2 things. The first is that I believe starting in July, when we do a presentation of learning and teaching priorities for next year, you'll begin to hear more about this, but you should throughout the year as well. We're going to be really focusing on building leadership next year with our 6-12 department chairs. We think that's really important for a lot of different reasons, but we're asking people to do some complicated work, and so if you take an example at the middle school level where there's only 2 administrators in that building, in order to pull some of this off, we need to build leadership throughout the organization. So you'll hear more about that in different ways. I just wanted to point that out. But the second thing, Mary, when you talk about using a coach and accessing a coach, can you explain what we mean by a coaching cycle?
Sure. So there's different ways that teachers access a coach, but if I'm going to work one-on-one with a coach, I may go in and say, you know, I need some help with raising my reading achievement in my classroom. I see that my students aren't making growth. So the coach and I will enter into a coaching cycle. So we'll spend several weeks working together, and that work can look very different depending what your goals are and outcomes are for the coaching cycle. The coach may come in and observe me teaching reading in this example, and then we'll meet together, debrief that, and then target some improvement areas. We might decide to videotape my instruction and then watch that video together to reflect on my instruction. We might go and see a really master reading teacher together, the coach and I, side by side, watching it and then reflecting on what we saw and what I could incorporate into my practice. So there's a variety of ways that will look, but it's a cycle that goes over several weeks that has a specific goal and outcome, and then a reflective piece at the end to see if you made your target. I will tell you, in my building when I was a principal, my best teachers had never-ending coaching cycles with my coach. They would go in with one goal, work through a coaching cycle, and then immediately move on to something else. So it's something we've worked really hard to build up in our teachers, that coaching is not for the teacher who's struggling. It can be, but our best athletes in the world, our best executives, all continue to have coaches. It's how we improve. So that's the way we've really tried to build our coaching program. So considering that this is the last week of school, the worst thing I could have done was to invite some teachers to come spend the evening here and talk about their experiences with the coach. But I really thought it was important for you to hear how teachers perceive that coaching impacts student learning, because again, that is the goal. So the wonderful Kate Alt has put together a video that we will show you featuring some of our district teachers.
Instructional coaches have helped improve student learning by helping us teachers looking at the standards, breaking them down, and then helping us check prior knowledge of our students, and then creating engaging lessons to keep students engaged.
Well, I teach at Jefferson, and our instructional coach is and she's just phenomenal. I feel that it's, like we have an in-house professional development person there all the time to help support teachers. I definitely feel supported by her in just learning new teaching strategies and taking some risks and growing as an educator. This year she's come in, Eureka was new this year for math. She came in to observe me teach some lessons because I was struggling with just timing of it. So she came in, observed me, sat down with me afterwards to kind of help block out some of the time and help me, know what things I should focus on, what things I should take out of my lessons to best support the students. She came into my room and did some co-teaching with me this year, and we tried out QFT, which is question formation technique, to get students thinking about the questions that they're asking, open questions versus closed questions, and then we've been able to transfer those skills when we're reading, and helping them form their questions. And currently she's helping me learn more about having literature groups for small groups of students, just giving students different roles, kind of giving them more ownership. She's been watching video after video after video so that I don't have to do that. She's been doing that, and then just kind of passing along the videos that I can watch to kind of help me learn more about literature groups. So I just feel that she's always there to support the teachers, and in turn, clearly that's helping the students. If they have teachers who are teaching better things and feeling more confident, it's really helping the students.
At my school, Madison, the instructional coach has helped improve student learning by really engaging in our classrooms with us. She comes in not only to observe and give us feedback on our teaching, she also helps us to reflect on our own observations of our students and how they respond to the way we teach. What's been helpful is I've had the opportunity to co-teach with my instructional coach, and she has really supported me in helping me to probe my students so that they can answer higher level thinking questions. We're working on STEM in our classrooms, and that has been a big part of our co-teaching. And the kids are very engaged, and what's nice is that follows alignment with our district and what we're moving towards, which is rigor in the classroom and keeping our kids engaged.
And I teach at 2 schools, so I've been fortunate enough to work with 2 instructional coaches this year, which has been fantastic. This is my first year of teaching, and I've definitely utilized them a lot, just in terms of looking for different things to implement within my classroom and kind of how to go around the feasibility of that. One thing in particular that I've implemented this year is guided math. Looking at a half-day kindergarten program, I was really stumped at how to fit that into our time of the day, but saw the importance with it so I could better meet the needs of all the students. I asked my instructional coach to come in and see what math currently looked like, and then give ideas as to how we could make the guided math work. It is something we were able to roll out, and I'm seeing a huge growth in my students' learning. If I didn't have my instructional coach, I don't know if that's something that I would have been able to work through on my own, just with the timing of the day. Through implementing guided math, I've seen the growth with my students, just in terms of students who needed extra support with counting and basic math skills before moving into the addition and subtraction that we're currently on. In that guided math time, my instructional coach has been in the room supporting. So she supported me as a teacher, and now she's directly supporting the students in the room. Ultimately, the students are the one who benefit because their learning is being maximized to its greatest potential.
I've been fortunate to work very closely with my instructional coach this year as reading specialists. We are always working together, collaborating on different pieces. But I think what I've really seen this year as far as an impact for the instructional coaches is that it's really cyclical. Oftentimes they're able to provide professional development on certain strategies, etc. And so many people can kind of just get an introduction to that particular strategy, and then we move into our PLCs, and that's an opportunity for our coach to be a member of that team to provide structure to our discussions and etc. And we can utilize those particular instructional strategies to kind of hone in on what is it that each particular student may need and how it might be useful in the classroom. And then working one-on-one with my instructional coach, I was able to use those particular strategies within the classroom, kind of frame the work and try to decide what might be the more specific learning targets that my students really needed to master, and then sort of just making sure that's cyclical throughout, trying to figure out different formative assessments and how we can make those things really work for the students. And overall, it's just been a wonderful experience that has really impacted student learning.
Our instructional coach, Effie Nassis, I think it's been really great to have her in the building, without a doubt. I mean, our conversations have been non-evaluative. You can go to her anytime, and I know that particularly myself, I've gone to her about reading instruction and reading groups. She helped me decide that as a teacher, I didn't have to always be in the mix of it and releasing that instruction to them, and really now truly as a teacher becoming a facilitator of learning rather than having to always plan for every situation. And what she walked me through was like how to guide the kids so that they can lead the group, they can start the questions, they can hold the discussions amongst each other. And I started with one book club group, and it eventually morphed into 4, and the kids absolutely love book clubs. Like they devour the books at home, and they are always looking at when are we going to start our next one. And what I've done, and she's helped me too, I mean, she's incredibly helpful. Like I said, okay, well, here's some books that works in that genre that the kids like, and she will just get whatever we need. And just being able to really express like your concerns, your excitement, your disappointment about a lesson that you did was great, having to be able to go and talk to her about. because again, like I said, it was non-evaluative. She helped provide fresh ideas about how to introduce something. She's even volunteered to come in to teach a lesson and co-teach, and so that the kids can hear a different voice. It's been really helpful overall to have the instructional coach in the building. I mean, at first I wasn't quite sure how this instructional coach was going to work in the building, but after breaking down my own personal barriers and saying, okay, well, here's why I'm struggling, where can you help, and then to get the ideas, and it was a very non-threatening environment. And she says, okay, well, let's talk about this, A, B, then C, and then to have the opportunity to come back and reflect on the lesson and the conversation that we had. All right, I think for me, it's helped me grow as an individual and as a teacher, and help bring and spur and abundant a little excitement in the class. For overall, I think the instructional coaches have been great, and they give my thumbs of approval to keep them for the duration. So there you go.
All right, I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Well, I'm going to cheat. My Cass coached my kids, and he's an amazing coach in and of his own right. And to have him embrace the program speaks volumes for it. My question to you is, who coaches the coaches? I mean, how do we develop?
Right, how do we continue to develop?
Keep them current?
So I work with the coaches personally twice a month. We meet 2 Friday afternoons a month to continue to further their growth and expertise. Our consultant, Cindy Harrison, we bring her in twice a year, usually one day in the fall, and then she spent 2 days with us. During that time, we often bring the principals in for part of it. So for example, when she was here, she was to have come in April and then had to reschedule for May, but the timing ended up working out because we had just gotten our survey feedback from the teachers. So she was able to facilitate a process with the coaches and the principals where they looked at their data and then really developed some goals and outcomes for the following school year with actions for the coach, actions for the administrator, because in the end, a coaching program will not be successful without administrative support. What are the measures of success? So those plans have been coming in, and I'm very impressed. They're very detailed. But overall, I lead their learning, and then we bring in other pieces as needed. Mm-hmm.
Mary, you touched on this a little bit, and you put up some percentages of participation. Would you say those are, I'm assuming you put them up there because you would consider them good numbers for, given that this is the first year of the program?
Well, second year, and then first year for our special ed coaches.
I mean, how would you profile the teacher that uses an instructional coach, more than, or 4 or 5 times during the year versus the teacher who says, no thanks, I'm out?
It's interesting. As we reflected on the survey, the coaches and I, we expressed disappointment in leaving out one key piece of demographic information to collect, which we will collect next year, which is how many years of teaching, so that we can then compare the usage with the years of teaching. So it varies a little bit building to building. Some of it is based on the relationships the coach has with the teachers. As you heard from Cass, I think he fits the profile very well. A teacher who works with a coach is someone who's willing to be vulnerable and to go to someone that they know is a peer, non-evaluative, and say, I want to get better at this. Or it may be, I am struggling with this. So that's one thing. Often our non-tenured teachers will seek that out. Often a teacher, whether they are tenured or non-tenured, if they've had an observation that maybe didn't go so well and got very pointed feedback from their evaluator, they may go to a coach and say, I really need to get better in this. What can we do? How can you help me? So it varies, but a big key piece is willingness to be vulnerable.
I mean, not to pick on Cass, but I know him as well, and he is an excellent teacher who's always looking to get better. And I mean, when I was asking for a profile, I mean, is that kind of the profile of the teacher, somebody who's confident in their own skills and not afraid to have somebody take a look at what they're doing and suggest maybe a different way? And are the teachers that aren't accessing the coaches teachers that are less confident in their abilities?
Sometimes that is some of it. Sometimes teachers don't feel they have something to learn from the coach. They've just not seen the value yet. So some areas where our principals are really looking to support the program is by really targeting some of their highest performing teachers, convince them to go through a coaching cycle, and then be willing to share out that experience with the rest of the staff, so that the teachers will see that this is not for struggling teachers, this is for all teachers.
In your experience with districts that have had coaches for a while, do those numbers increase in terms
Yes.
of the number of uses of coaches?
Yes. Now, every teacher is benefiting from a coach in some way, in that they lead full staff PD on institute days, late arrivals, they're pushing into PLCs. So all teachers are getting some level of support from the coach, but in terms of engaging in that one-on-one individual growth and performance, yes, I would expect to see those numbers pick up.
Thank you.
Mary, I'm going to take the questions broad and then get to two particular slides and graphs. And,
okay.
So as we talk about success or familiarity breeds utilization, the question is more around the instructional coaches that we've had around longer, and then the special education instructional coaches this past year. And your comment about the utilization or lack thereof this first year. And the nuance is the crossover of gen ed, special education, vice versa. So the question that I have for you is, how are we communicating? How are we looking at that element to drive success, but drive the utilization, drive the familiarity, and actually just the awareness and understanding of what this all means and which one do I bring in for what?
Right.
Okay.
So our coaches, I think based as the coaches looked at, so the coaches and I looked at the district results, like I showed you, and then they were able to look at their own building with similar graphs and charts. So what I've noticed as they've been planning for next year is a greater sense of coaches working together, instructional coaches and special education instructional coaches, to plan how they will sort of do a reboot in the fall. Again, talking about the supports that they can provide to teachers. I'm seeing much more specific steps from principals about how they will encourage. We don't mandate coaching, but what is required is that all teachers continue to learn and grow professionally every year. Coaching is one avenue to do that. If that's not how you choose to do that, how are you going to do it, is a question principals will ask. But, you know, just sort of keeping that in the forefront. We have this, as the one teacher said, in your building, job embedded PD available every single day of the year. That is such a gift to our teachers. So it's that working together, really the support of our principals, where they can kind of say, well, Heather, who's one of our elementary special education coaches, I heard Heather worked with a teacher on the same type of thing. You might want to seek her out and see what kind of support she could provide to you.
The next question is around, I made drew the conclusion that it was more like one-on-one, instructor with instructional coach. But I'm wondering about the one in X, like grade level, subject matter expertise. Is that happening as well?
That does happen. So with our instructional coaches in PLCs, they're really able to work with groups of teachers at that time. So it's both.
So the last one is, there's two slides that I wasn't sure, let's see, which, well, just Stop at one of them. They're the pie charts, the 2 pie charts.
Okay.
Okay, so, no, that's not it.
This one.
Opportunities for growth, yes. You've got 5 or more, which was blue, and then you've got a 26.6, which is what? The red.
The red. So the red represents teachers who only worked with their coach in a group setting, either receiving, participating in full staff professional learning, in a PLC, a grade level meeting, a department meeting, something of that nature.
Go to your other pie.
So the orange yellowy one is worked 1 to 2 times, one-on-one with the coach. The green is 3 to 4 times. One-on-one with the coach. That little sliver of purple is some type of anomaly in the Google form. That little purple sliver really belongs in the red.
So the last one, thank you for that clarification. The last one is the working with special education pie chart. There's 2 non-applicable, so I was wondering what you meant by that. Not that one. So go to, what slide is it? It is page 15 for me. 15 to 17? There you go.
This one.
You see how there's one on the top left and then...
Yeah, and you notice how that's purple again? So for some reason, something happened. It may be that one of the buildings, when they copied the Google form over for their school, tweaked something in it. So the purple and the blue would be together.
And then thank you for adding, with Jim's question, the years for the teaching. I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
So this isn't a question, it's more of a comment, but I wanted to really point out that I appreciated that you listed both the strengths and on the same slide, the opportunities for growth. Because I think that's the important part. I mean, just like we're talking about, we can always grow, that's the important part. And it also makes this process much more real. So thank you very much for identifying both where the successes were, and then really focusing on where those opportunities for growth are.
I think, as you heard several teachers mention, reflection, reflection, reflection. And that's something that the coaches and I engage in quite often when we have our learning sessions together. One of the projects they had to do this year was to engage in a video coaching cycle with another coach. So they partnered up and they had to be recorded doing some aspect of coaching that they were hoping to improve in, and then reflect on that with another coach so that they could experience how uncomfortable that is, so that as they encourage teachers to do it, they can relate and kind of guide them through that more effectively. So it was an unsettling and uncomfortable experience for them, but they learned quite a bit from that with their, again, that reflection, reflection, reflection.
So I just wanted to say, last meeting we got a presentation on special education, and, there's a lot of things that happen that go on like this that you may not see as a parent and how it's impacting your child's learning. But I wanted to give a little testimonial that the special education coaches in the middle school, it has been life-changing. For the first time in a long time, I would say that our special ed kids have true access to, in a way that I would say hasn't been precedented to the regular curriculum. And the learning and the opportunities and, they're bridging that gap. How do you take something that's going on in a regular science class at a middle school level and making it work for a child that's significantly below grade level? And it's been phenomenal. And I just think that, that's we're making a resource investment, but I think that in this case, I've been able to see personally how it's just been amazing. And I think the coaches should be commended for their work. I know it's hard, and also just that the teachers who are willing to say, help me with this, because it really, it's making a difference. So.
It is. Maureen is our middle school special education instructional coach, and she is outstanding and has worked very collaboratively with the instructional teacher to really build those bridges and help.
All right, thanks, Mary. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of board meeting minutes. So I need a motion for A, approval of April 20th.
Kara, you don't need a motion for it.
Sorry, thank you. Any changes? Just kidding. No changes? No changes, they stand as. We need to do an approval of the February 27th, March 20th, April 10th, and April 24th, and May 8th closed session minutes. Any changes to those? Okay, they stand as submitted. All right, superintendent's agenda. Does anyone want to pull any items off the agenda?
I'd like to remove items C and D.
Any other items? So I need a motion for items A, B, E, and F.
I move that we approve superintendent's consent agenda, items A, B, E, and F, as proposed.
I second.
Discussion? Okay.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 6 ayes, 1 absent, no nays. Okay. Motion passes, sorry. Item E.
No, C.
C, sorry. Sorry, goodness. All right, item C, motion.
I move that the Board of Education exercise the option to extend the original agreement and approve the extension of the contract for regular transportation services with First Student, Inc., with a 2.5% increase in route and field trip rates for the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 school years.
I second.
Discussion.
I pulled this as well as item D because these are negotiated contract extensions. Although the language of the motion in C talks about an option. I don't know if it's an option written into the contract that the board is exercising. It's my understanding from talking to Dr. Moyer that this was a negotiated increase of 2.5% per year for 2 years of the existing contract. So whether it had a built-in provision that we're exercising, there is a negotiated increase, and so it invokes the same thing. My problem is with competitive procurement, and I think we have always, as a board, supported competitive procurement as a way of demonstrating to the community that we are obtaining value when we spend tax money. It's universal, it's in the school code, it's community value. And it's not without exceptions. There are exceptions to competitive procurement, which are addressed situations. I've approached this from a general kind of gut feeling. You bid it unless you have a good reason not to. And I'm not sure I see those good reasons in the very brief description, labor shortage, that's in the it's on the agenda. They seem kind of conclusory, and I'm not sure they really support us negotiating a number. And I talked to Dave about this, and, you know, obviously we're at a little disadvantage without having Chris here. I understand that. But then I also did some reading after our conversation and realized, surprise, we need to read our policy. And our policy 460 refers to a section of the school code that requires award to the lowest responsible bidder. Obviously, 5 minutes of research is not good research. So I'm raising that now. But I have questioned whether this should have, as a legal matter, been bid. Or does that exception come there? And I apologize for raising it now. I mean, I should have raised it earlier before the weekend, so maybe our attorney could come in. So I'd just like to address it as a matter of practice rather than the applicability of the policy. And so I put it out there to the board. I mean, should we be approving something without a better demonstration that this is one of the exceptions to competitive procurement?
May I give you my particular opinion on this particular subject? I don't generalize this to everything, but if you recall, not the beginning of this bus contract, but the beginning of the previous bus contract, we took the lowest responsible bidder. And you will recall all the emails you got from the superintendent at that time about the less than stellar service we received from that lowest responsible bidder. And our parents were upset. Our children had been left stranded multiple times. Buses got in numerous accidents. We exited that contract, as I recall, as soon as possible. And it might have been even before the contract was over, but our first opportunity, we exited that contract. Rebid, hired the present company, and by all accounts have received excellent service. Based upon that excellent service, I mean, a 2.5% increase is far less than even fuel has increased. Personally, I think it's reasonable to extend a contract with a company that is providing such an important service, which is to get our children to school safely and on time every day. That every time you go out, I mean, unless you're buying truly a commodity which is exactly the same from every provider, you take a risk every time you put it out to bid and grant that, award that contract to who you think is the lowest responsible bidder, with the emphasis being on responsible. I just think you take a risk. I think we have something that's working here at a reasonable price. Personally, I can support this as a good business decision.
Just to follow up, so should we go through this analysis at the board table anytime we have contract that doesn't get awarded through a competitive procurement process? I mean, how do we define good deal if we don't have a procurement process that gives us a safe harbor on what is a good deal?
Again, I think we're at a disadvantage because Chris Welton isn't here. I'm sure he could give us his perspective. He has far more experience. But I guess my point is, putting it out to competitive bid does not assure that you are getting the best deal every time, particularly when it's a service provided and not simply a commodity where the product is exactly the same by each bidder.
I think.
Hold on, Margaret wants to say something.
And let me approach this on a slightly different, because when I look at this, I heard your nuance, because I think it's important to do competitive bidding for a variety of different reasons. And one very important one is to safeguard our taxpayer funds. In this instance, I looked at this as it was written into the contract, the option to extend the contract. Okay, and I don't know if we have the full contract in front of us, and I don't know some of what was specifically discussed as what that 2-year option for extension would include.
Just, do we have that information, Dave? Whether this was an option or a negotiated extension?
We had the option by mutual agreement to extend our existing.
That's not an option.
The contract was for a 3-year period with an option to be extended for 2 additional years if mutually agreed upon.
That used the word option in a way that's not an option. That's a negotiated extension. Either party could say no, so that's not an option. So does that make a difference? I don't know if it makes a difference. We have a negotiated extension. And the point is, yes, you do take in performance in determining whether to extend. But what we don't have is we don't know whether the 2.5, I guess this board could kind of say, well, look at the rate of inflation. There is this conclusory statement about increased labor. Jim mentioned fuel costs. And I guess, you know, if that's what the board wants to go forward on that collection of factors, I would just look for a little more systematic approach to evaluating a contract where we don't have a procurement process to rely on.
If you look in the contract, this is also consistent with the law. There's a compiled statute 529.6.1 is referenced in the contract. So the legality of this, I don't think should be a concern. You talked about that earlier with policy versus legality or whatever. I spoke with the business office today in response to your concerns, and Jim referenced issues that we've had in the past with bus companies. I will tell you that we have been extremely satisfied with the service as compared to our previous provider for sure. But if there were ever any issues, they've been extremely responsive and have moved immediately to correct any types of issues that may have occurred. And there's no doubt that it is extremely difficult for these bus companies to find drivers. That is a trend that all of them are experiencing. I think that the business office feels very confident that this is an appropriate proposal, or they would not have brought it forward.
And I think some of this is process, as John's saying, which I think is very valid. Having worked with Chris on this on a number of other occasions, I think he's done all of this. It just doesn't show up in the rationale here, which going forward needs to. He talks to his peers a lot, so I'm sure that he has reference points with other districts as to what some of their rate renewals were and increases were. And so to John's point, I think even if you're going to single source it and renew it, there's at least some informal conversations to go around to figure out whether that renewal is at market or not. I think that's a piece of information that's not in here that would be helpful. If Chris were here, I feel pretty confident that he would have that information to tell us, just having worked with him in the past on this. I did not work with him on this particular one. But so I think that's what John's saying is I just want to know what you used for benchmarking that 2.5% when you chose to renew this. And again, I think 2.5% is a good number, and I would be shocked if Chris hadn't talked to several other districts in coming to this. I think the issue is just with what's written up.
So again, I think the challenge is Chris is not here right now to provide this information. What's at risk if we, what's at risk? Is there any timing that's involved if we look at this and have further discussion in our next meeting?
I spoke with Adrian about this afternoon. If we had to bid this at this point, we would have significant issues with. And
I apologize, I don't mean to bid it. I mean, because Chris is not here, just to have that additional conversation. So not really bid it. I'm just talking about filling in some of those blanks that we have right now on what process was created and what was done.
Well, you know, Adrian asked me if she should stay, and I told her that she should feel free to leave. But I believe that if she was here, she would be able to explain exactly what Chris is alluding to, which is the fact that that the business office has studied the issue and can't provide that information. I mean, if we don't approve this till June, I haven't looked at the specific dates here of this contract. I don't know if that in any way jeopardizes anything. I'm sure that the business office would feel a lot more comfortable if it were approved.
The amendment starts on August 1st.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not hearing anyone pushing back on the renewal. I think we just, from a process standpoint, would feel more comfortable, and as an overseer of the public funds, having Chris just answer those questions before we voted if possible.
Since I raised the ruckus, that's what it's all about, is explaining to the public why this is a good deal and when we don't have that safe harbor of procurement.
If we wait till June to vote, will we lose, are we at risk of losing the contract?
I don't have the answer to that question for you. I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I could answer that for you.
Yeah. And again, I'm just reiterating, it commences on August 1st. It doesn't sound like there's any gap in our time or service, because they'll do it up till the end of the year. And then it'll start again August 1st. It seems like June 19th is within plenty of time before the August 1st. Again, I don't have any information, but I think it's worth getting that additional clarity.
The only thing I can tell you is I don't know how much lead time has to go into them programming bus routes, taking a look at our addresses and deciding all of those different types of logistics. I don't know how much lead time they need to be able to prepare for that first day of school.
And we're asking these questions in the absence of our assistant superintendent, and asking this question with his assistant who went home. So we're speculating whether there's an emergency tonight or not.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, it sounds like we're talking about having some additional discussion. It's not. We have been happy with the service. All the other information seems to be in alignment. We're just asking for some additional discussion. I think that's reasonable. I think there could be conversations that could be had if by chance this would make first student nervous. There could be some conversations that could be had just what the intent of the board was, and it's just to get some background information. So I think it makes sense to delay this until our next meeting, so we can get some of the information on the process piece.
And it's just clarifying due diligence on behalf of the community and taxpayers. That's all it is. So you know, they know we're happy, you know, it's good faith effort. I say we take the risk.
So if we don't vote, are we willing to risk, like, that we aren't going to lose the contract? Okay, should we table this for now, and let's go on to, D?
The issues are identical with D, even if the party's different.
Okay, so we'll table, we'll move on, and then we'll come back. Okay? All right, so superintendent's agenda. A, adoption of resolution approving surety bond of treasurer.
I move that the Board of Education adopt the resolution approving surety bond of treasurer.
I second the motion.
Discussion?
Are you going to provide an overview, Dave?
Well, this is just required, this is required by law. We have to appoint a surety bond of treasurer, and that person is Adrian. That is so noted in the resolution. So this is just an annual process that's required by law.
Okay, any comments? Discussion? All right.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion passes. B, approval of staff salaries for 2018-2019 non-union.
So the cost of living, CPI, 2.1 this year. The all non-negotiated employees that are not members of bargaining units, I guess I didn't say that correctly. All employees who are not members of bargaining units that are subject to negotiated agreements. The recommendation with a few administrators that fall into some special categories like retirement tracks and some other circumstances noted in your packet. The recommendation is that that employee group receive the CPI cost of living increase of 2.1% for the 2018-19 school year.
Need a motion and then.
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2018-2019 non-union salaries as recommended.
I'll second.
All right, discussion? Ready? Okay.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent, motion carries. C, adoption of resolution ascertaining prevailing wages.
This again is something that is an annual legal requirement that that the board approve the prevailing wage resolution. So you should be familiar with this required by law annual requirement.
I move that the Board of Education approve the prevailing wage resolution as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Collins.
I mean, this is required of all school boards by the Illinois legislature. Is that correct?
Correct.
And essentially is in place it increases our costs of construction, of maintenance, et cetera?
Well, how can I carefully answer that?
You probably can't, so I'm not asking you to.
Okay.
I would say that paying a decent wage does increase costs over not paying a decent wage, yes.
Okay, any other discussion? All right.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 5 ayes, no, 1 present, no nays, 1 absent, motion carries. D, approval of contract for website redesign.
I will set the stage here, and Malia is prepared, and Dave, to address specific questions. But I have indicated to you that the district has been looking at improved website functionality. From Malia's standpoint, there were some legal requirements that needed to occur for ADA purposes, so there was a practical impetus there. But then I think that we all agreed that there were some functionality and usability things that we would like to see as a part of that process. And so they examined some of the various different options that were out there and believe that for various reasons that this is clearly the appropriate recommendation. There's a one-time setup fee that involves a lot of the migration of information and other back channel types of things that have to occur. And then an annual fee associated with that is $34,500, and then the $35,000 is a one-time setup fee. So we would ask that you approve this so that we can begin the process, which is actually very complicated and extensive, of getting this up and running and our public's ability to use it with the 2018-19 school year, or as soon as possible to the beginning of the school year as possible.
I move that the Board of Education approve the website services contract with Final Site in an amount of $34,500 annually and a one-time setup cost of $35,000, pending review of agreement terms by district's legal counsel.
I second.
Okay, discussion or questions?
I'd just like to say there's a great bid tab here. It was a competitive process. I think when we have that, I think we should put it in the consent agenda.
But John, we're accepting the highest bid.
And the rationale is spelled out pretty adequately.
And it is, and I support it. Right. But again, we've trusted our staff to do analysis, arrive at a good business decision, which I believe they have, and I support, in this case, taking the highest bid. I'm sorry they didn't document it in the bus case, but I think we're wasting we're putting the taxpayer at risk by not approving that bus contract tonight.
I have a couple questions on the website redesign. 2 key questions. One, I very much appreciate the tab of, or the procurement information. I also saw that there was a team of people that made this decision. So my question is, can you tell me a little bit about that team of people who was involved in this decision? The second question I have is implementation question on, I think I saw the timing up here sometime in September, and I'm wondering how this new web design is going to be transitioned, particularly during this sensitive time of students arriving and parents' new school year?
Okay, well, first of all, the team was David Smith, myself, my assistants, both Jenna Ernst, who has experience in web design, and Kate Alt, and also Beverly Redmond was involved in the process. And we worked with Final Site Representative Amanda, who is here in the audience, Amanda Holsclaw, and once we had identified Final Site, she's really provided us with a lot of background information. And I will say, this was the highest bid among the bids that we sought, but it certainly is not out of line with some other projects that we are familiar with. Website redesign can cost upwards of $100,000. So we feel like this is a really good product at a really good price. And as far as implementation, once this contract is approved, we will begin working with Final Site immediately, because as Dave said, this is a huge project. We have something like 2,000 web pages, so we're going to have to do some house cleaning, and Final Site is going to help us port 500 pages over. So during this process, our old website will be live. It will stay live. We just kind of got painted in a corner with our old provider. They became so ADA compliant, they locked down so many features that we honestly could not have the flexibility and the design that we required. So I apologize that this is kind of a last-minute decision, and we're going to do the best we can to transition smoothly. But we will begin working on the new website immediately in June, even though the contract is July 1st. They're giving us a 45-day terms, yeah, 45-day terms, so we can begin work immediately. So we'll keep the existing website up for the beginning of school, and we still have to make some arrangements with our current provider, but they are going to cut the cord on the look and feel that we have right now as of the end of September. So that's the corner we're painted into. We have to do something. So we will do everything we can to make this as smooth as possible. We've talked about having a soft launch, which means just getting it out there, getting some comments while the other website is still up and running, getting some feedback from parents, from students, from community. A web redesign process, web process period, is never finished. It's always a work in progress. And one of the cool things about Final Site, in addition to the fact that they have this fantastic partnership with AudioEye, which not only identifies ADA problems, but actually fixes them, so that we can have a web design that will suit people who have ADA problems, who have issues with accessibility, but we don't have to sacrifice our design to the 90% of the other people that don't have those needs. So we can have both. And I think the thing that's really great about Final Site too is they have a Google Analytics system built into the product, so that we're going to get real-time data and real-time feedback on where people are going and what's working and what's not working. So we're just going to keep working it until we get something that everybody's happy with. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. And we do have Amanda here, like I said, so if you have any specific questions, she would be happy to answer them.
Well, it's very nice to have Amanda in the audience, because I'm just thinking it shows a level of commitment, and starting up this new web design, we are probably going to need that same level of commitment. So I hope to be seeing you not just this time, but particularly in the September timeframe.
So to that point, I know that I sent you an email earlier around that same thing. Margaret used implementation plan, I used process. So the point is that, like you said, this has come up on us. At the same time, it's impacting all of our staff, all of our parents, anyone who wants to use it, and this is a critical time for us to have our website available and a smooth transition for people who are looking on our website for the information that we're doing, because we have so many things going on, whether it be internal or external. So the thought being is, can you come back to us and tell us more about what the implementation process, deployment process is what I'll say, how you're getting input and feedback from staff and community members, maybe give us some look and feel, you know what I mean? So that people can start to see it, so they become familiar with it, whether it be, board meeting and or other social media. So it's not something that's brand new. As soon as people are going right back to school, and then the time frame. And then I'm assuming that we're going to do, it's going to be a multi-phase, like you said. Things are going to be changing, but there's going to be something to get it in place, and then some additional changes, and just give us a flavor of what that is and what it looks like, and so people are already seeing it and familiar with it.
We would absolutely love to do that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, 1 absent, no nays, motion carries. E, approval of donations, Bryan, Jefferson, and Sandburg.
All right, in this item we have 3, as you stated. The first at Bryan Middle School, Aiden Shea Foundation. This nonprofit, Aiden, a former District 205 student, passed away a couple years ago, and has a twin brother in 6th grade at Bryan. And the foundation would like to donate $5,000 to the Bryan Library in his memory. And the intent is to use that toward mobile bookcases and wall-mounted countertop brackets for the library. If you make the connection, we're trying to take a look at how we use space in the library, so this provides maximum flexibility for different types of activities that occur there. Then the Jefferson PTA, that amount is $18,000 for leveled classroom libraries, and $9,500 toward STEM activities that would support a makerspace environment for students at that school. And then the third, Sandburg, the middle school PTA, like to donate $3,000, again, for makerspace types of activities, and also furniture to support those types of activities, for STEM and makerspace types of activities. So those are the 3 we would recommend that you approve acceptance of those donations.
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donations from the Aiden Shea Foundation to Bryan Middle School in the amount of $5,000 to be used in the library, from the Jefferson School PTA in the amount of $18,000 to provide each classroom with a library, from the Jefferson School PTA in the amount of $9,500 to be used to purchase items to support STEM-focused activities, and from the Sandburg Middle School PTA in the amount of $3,000 to purchase furniture for the library makerspace. These donations are accepted in accordance with Policy 880, Gifts to the District.
Second.
I just want to, can you just, Mary, because I asked you earlier. So I know we've talked about the books being donated and you keep track of that. So could you just talk a little bit about, this is a STEM donation that's, makerspace. Could you just talk about how you're keeping an eye on that, I guess?
Sure. First, I'll address the classroom libraries at Jefferson. So if you will recall, last year, many of our PTAs donated to our elementary schools funds of varying amounts for classroom libraries, guided reading materials. Jefferson PTA did not do that. They did not give Jefferson any funds for that last year. Then this school year, I built into the learning and teaching budget funds to support at each of our schools classroom libraries. And those amounts varied based on how much funding they had received from PTAs. because Jefferson had funds but chose to use them in another way last year, I didn't bump up Jefferson's allocation from the learning and teaching budget. They received the minimal amount. So I would say, based on what other schools have received through the learning and teaching budget, through grant funds, that Jefferson has been behind. So this would be a way of Jefferson's PTA providing funds to kind of bring them up to where other schools are. When it comes to STEM, Dr. Cohen, Dave Beatty, and I, we are talking with each principal as they seek funding either from PTAs or other sources about what they are purchasing. For example, we monitored kind of the themes grants because we had a school who, we had all of the elementary librarians put in a grant together for some funds for Makerspace divided equally among them. They did that last year as well. Conrad Fisher put in a separate grant this year for some Makerspace materials. They were the only school that did. They received that funding. So we are kind of monitoring where people are getting funding. With Makerspace, it's a little different in that we're in the newer phase of that. And so sometimes there are some materials or things that some schools are getting and trying out to see if it's something we then want to build in the following year for all schools.
So I think that's an important point to make, that Dave Beatty is going to be asked next year to try to sift through this makerspace concept, especially in hopes that we may have some facilities upgraded to include these types of spaces, so that we have a prototype of what are the types of things that should be taking place in there, what are the types of things you need to support those activities, so that we don't have a hodgepodge across the district. But right now we're doing some experimenting and innovating to try to figure out what works at different grade levels and what's out there. And I would say, just in addition to what Mary said, which was very thorough, but as you know, we're moving toward K2 deployment of our personalized learning, and so all the computer labs are coming out of all of the schools. And so some of the schools have made different spaces available for makerspace activities. Jefferson, at least for now, is planning to utilize that former computer lab as a makerspace, and it is adjacent to the library. So that's part of their plan. And so just, I don't know the extent to which that makes a difference, but I just wanted to add that piece of information as well.
Thank you, Kara and Mary, for sharing that additional information on how not only we internally with your budgets, but also this District 205 Foundation is helping us to make sure that we have balance across the schools. So it's happening in multiple different ways, so you can't just look at the PTA funding, et cetera. You've got to look at it as a full package. And you know, we did, as a board, look at that a lot for many years. And so, you know, it might not look like it if you're just taking one piece of it, but it's important for us to communicate and continue to communicate to various different ways to get the message out that we're accommodating balance for our students.
Just a reminder, we had the committee meeting, policy committee meeting back in October, and there were some parents there, and we discussed the policy on equity, and it's very clear every gift we take is subject to policy 880, and 880 says that the gift shall permit the district to work toward resource equity among its learning centers. And I think if you polled all administration and the board on this issue, we'd all say that resource equity is a non-negotiable. And we believe it, and we try to live it. And I hope the community understands that there's a real commitment here in this room toward resource equity. we're also at the same time very grateful for our school communities who are so dedicated to their communities that they do this great fundraising, and we try to accommodate both those things. But resource equity is non-negotiable.
Do you want to vote and then do the thank yous, or you want to? Let's vote.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion passes.
So I'm going to provide 2 thank yous. First is Brian. I wanted to thank the Aiden Shea Foundation and Aiden's family, friends, and peers. This is a fabulous way to honor Aiden and to continue having him with us. So it's an honor for us to keep Aiden involved with the students, so thank you so much. Jefferson PTA, thank you for focusing on literacy and STEM. I know that this is a new initiative, and so it's great to have the community at Jefferson supporting it, and so we thank you.
Thank you to the Sandburg Middle School PTA, a great group that in their donation for the library conversion to makerspace, donation to purchase furniture, really shows a responsiveness to the district's direction, and it's great to have them as team members.
Okay. F, approval of donation.
This is separate because it's a little bit different. It's a sponsorship donated to the York music program in honor of a senior graduate this year who is a very talented musician. And so they want to support the Fine Arts Week and the York Album Project programs. Of course, we saw Chris here tonight. They would like to do that at the for the amount of $1,000 a year for 5 years, and give Mr. Gemko some discretion into what his needs are on an annual basis. And so it's a little bit different than a standard donation, so it was separated out from the others.
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of a 5-year sponsorship from Mr. and Mrs. John and Ann Buckley in an amount of $1,000 a year for a total of $5,000. The board accepts the conditions of the donation, that the donation be used for the Fine Arts Week and York Album Project program, and any sponsorship attribution and programming references Mads Buckley. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, gifts to the district.
I second the motion.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion carries.
We're thanking after, so yes. I'd just like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Buckley for the donation. Once again, we have a very generous community, and we're very thankful for it.
Superintendent's communication.
Okay, we have 3 Freedom of Information requests. And the first one requesting specific invoices was granted, one requesting specific employee information was granted, one requesting a specific bid was granted. All 3 were granted. Then I just wanted to, we haven't talked a lot about our professional learning in the district because we've had just so many things related to facilities and other things. So I'm indulging myself here, but I think it's important that that we demonstrate at the cabinet level that we expect to continue to grow and improve in the same way that we are encouraging our leadership team at the building levels and our teachers to do the same. And so we brought in Nate Levinson from the district managed group to facilitate a cabinet retreat on May 15th. The day was organized into 4 big ideas. Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? What will get in our way? And what are our individual and team responsibilities in achieving these goals? Cabinet discussed the current state of the district and future priorities and worked through a series of exercises to identify next steps in providing proper support for the buildings which are entrusted with implementing the district's vision. Next steps include a leadership team retreat on May 31st in which the entire team will work together to establish shared ownership over agreed upon priorities and begin a dialogue about roles, communication, and systems to ensure coherence and high performance. This will be followed up by individual interviews with building principals and a workshop to study feedback in June. Some of the work related to school improvement will be shared by the Learning and Teaching Department in July as part of its annual presentation on the instructional focus areas for the 2018-19 school year. And then I just wanted to give an update on where we're at with the community engagement process. We have 3 more individual building visits, and we have 2 more large group community engagement sessions, May 23rd at 7 p.m. at Bryan Middle School and May 30th at 7 p.m. at Sandburg Middle School. And so, as you're aware, but I'll repeat, all of that input is going to be studied and analyzed, and there will be a report at the June board meeting. Also, the master facilities plan, we had talked about developing an FAQ sheet and updating that as we move through the process. And so what you have at your table is some printed material that shows you where we're at with the FAQ process at this point. And is this live? This is not live at this point. So can you just kind of speak to where we're at with that? Because I think there are board members who have some interest in that.
Yes, and I'm very aware of that. To quote Marcia, we're dancing as fast as we can. Kind of in line with the board's decision to say, you know what, we need to get input from all of the community engagement meetings before we really dig into boundary adjustment discussion. We feel like we need to keep collecting information that's being given to us on the index cards and through our exit surveys. We are trying to organize. This shows you kind of how we're trying to organize the information and that we are truly working on it. But you well know that this is a very sophisticated community, and these questions are not easy questions. It's not like just question, answer. Some of them are really have a lot of tentacles, and we have to kind of check out some of these things and check with our bonding people, check with White and Company, check with even our own team members to get some really good answers. So I want to make sure that what we're putting out there is quality information, and I think we are going to have more time in the coming week to work on this as we're kind of winding down with the community engagement meetings, and we have the web redesign off of our plates and some other things. So I apologize that we haven't gotten where we wanted to be by this point in time, but we are working on it.
And then the final thing, could you just address where we're at with the thought exchange portion of some of the community input?
Sure. Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And thank you very much. And I appreciate, I know there's a lot of effort that goes in here. And I greatly appreciate making sure we have quality answers, as we always do. We work toward that. I'm going to kind of push you on estimated date. When you think there might be something that would be able to be given to the community? FAQs.
I'm looking at Bev. I think we're going to need a week to get something. We want to start with a kind of basic who, what, where, why kind of thing. And then we do already have a Google form set up that we will then go live with so that people can keep adding questions. So it's going to be a living, breathing document. But I just want to get some standard questions up there that we see in our hearing over and over again. So I'm hoping that in a week we can have that ready to go.
Thank you.
Now, as to thought exchange, we've talked a lot about thought exchange. We already had a thought exchange survey about, was it 18 months ago already? And it was a very positive experience and everybody really liked it. So again, we really want to do this right because we know it can work and we know how valuable it can be. We have been going back and forth with thought exchange, having discussions with them, and this is the entire communications team, Leslie, Marcia, Bev, myself, and Alan from Thought Exchange. When we first started talking about using a Thought Exchange survey this spring, we were thinking that we were only going to do 4 large community engagement meetings. Then we started doing listening sessions. Then we started doing informational sessions. And I think Marcia and the team worked really hard to create a quality exit survey. So point being, we're getting a lot more data than we originally thought we would have. And I think that's going to help inform the board's decision. We talked with Alan about, I guess, the complication of running 2 surveys kind of side by side. If we were doing thought exchange at the same time we're doing the exit survey, he felt that there would be some confusion on people's parts and that it might actually diminish participation in both. So it was the opinion of Thought Exchange, which we also shared, that those 2 processes should be separate. Now, one complication is that our contract with them expires at the end of June. They are more than happy to extend that contract as is until, I believe it was the end of November, So that's going to be plenty of time for us to pick this up again and run with it when the time is appropriate. We really want to have the time and the space to get the larger community involved, and that's going to take, you know, ads in the paper, possibly mailer postcards. It's just going to take time to have that happen. And I think to spend $18,000 and not have the voice of the larger community heard would be a mistake. So we would ask the board's forbearance to allow us the time to do that. And I think it really is going to be, I think we're talking about probably August, September, and I think it's going to be a great way to re-engage the community after we come back from the summer break and start really rolling forward in the fall.
So that's really the information I think that we had talked about sharing related to the community engagement process. So basically, unless there are additional questions, I think that's it for my report.
Dave, thanks a lot for the way that you framed the Leadership Summit and the Cabinet Retreat from the standpoint of you're continuously improving too. What I'd like, I'm understanding this, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's more like that the district, we're rolling out a lot of things, and it's really looking at from a district office and cabinet leadership, how are we doing that on behalf of the whole district. And so with that framing and assumption or conclusion that I'm drawing, can we have periodic updates or more information in the future about what this is starting to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I would anticipate regular updates on this because I think that the goal is that this would be intertwined with everything that we do. The goal is that we want to be able to effectively support the work of the principals, and in order to do that, our internal processes need to be studied on a regular basis, and also, as we had talked about in different ways, taking a look at roles and point decision-making responsibility, communicating various aspects of change to various different audiences, asking Bev to be a part of that process as we go through June here, and she gets her thinking together about what that might look like going into next year with these different things that are going on. So if you have specific and direct questions, we certainly will always be happy to answer them. And as this process kind of gets off the ground, I would give you, some initial information. But I think that what you will see is the goal is that this is just part of ongoing systematic improvement. And I think if it works right, you should see that reflected in virtually everything that we do would be the goal.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, when you talked about supporting the principals, building principals, what you mean is on behalf of, for all of the people at those buildings. So I just wanted to make sure that, I know that you know that, and that's what what you mean when you say that. I just want to make sure that it's clear.
Yes, yes. We're trying to improve outcomes and minimize frustrations.
Yeah, so we have to go back, but while we're kind of talking about the facilities plan, so on June 19th, we're going to get a report, correct, with all of the feedback from the exit survey, the listening sessions, a huge report. So I'm anticipating that that's going to be a lot to digest, and we're going to need some time to process that. So while we may have some initial questions and discussions, I'd like to know your thoughts on having a workshop meeting some point after that meeting where all we do is sit and talk about all the feedback that we've gotten. We've had a little bit of time to process that. So if so, then we can have Ellen help work on a date, but I wanted to throw that out there. Rough time frame, I would think, we don't want it too far away because we forget, but, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I forget. So I don't know, a week later, it's probably going to just be a little bit of when we can all work together.
The point is that you'll have Ellen poll us if we say yes, go forward.
Exactly.
And that's what and it's sometime after June 19th, but not too far into
Maybe
July.
a week later. Okay. We'll have Ellen poll about a workshop meeting. And then now we need to go back up to item C under superintendent's agenda. We already had motion, so just continue the discussion. Update?
I do. He said that if we go out to bid, if we have to go out to bid, that we would. That wasn't the question. No, I understand that. I'm just trying to explain his answer. That would potentially jeopardize things, but in terms of jeopardizing other aspects of getting the school year off the ground or our relationship with being able to continue to contract, that if we were to approve it in June, if he were to give a report and we were to approve it in June, that he thought that that would be okay.
It's not my motion, but perhaps the person who did the motion might want to either withdraw it or do we defer it? I don't know. Does anybody know parliamentary procedure?
You need to do a motion to table it to a later date and then vote on it. Yes, because you originally did it.
Are we amending the motion, or is it we're amending the motion?
You're tabling it.
I think someone else has to make the motion, so I'll make the motion to table C. Can't table I just make motion to table C and D.
I second.
Okay. Amy?
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Sure.
Mr. Collins?
Yep.
Mrs. Caforio?
Yes. 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion carries. That cover everything, Amy? We good? Okay. All right. Any board communications? Jim?
Looking ahead to upcoming meetings, Mary, have we officially scheduled a Learning and Teaching Committee meeting for June 6th at 6 o'clock?
I just emailed Ellen while we were sitting here to get that posted in the agenda.
Great.
So yes, June 6th at 6 p.m. here.
Great, and we're going to follow up on our commitment from the last Learning and Teaching Committee to revisit the acceleration period and also talk about updates in math.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we have 2 upcoming meetings as of right now. Tuesday, June 11th, special Board of Education meeting at 6 p.m. and Tuesday, June 19th, a Board of Education meeting at 7:30. If there are no other, oh, and then Monday, June 6th, Learning and Teaching Committee meeting at 6 p.m. Oh, okay, or Wednesday. Well, whatever. I'm off my game tonight. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned.